It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you,
you
Joey.
too.
How do I pronounce your last name?
Domino.
Domino.
Domino,
Okay,
okay, cool.
got
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So too many vowels. I love the album. I love the story. I want to get into it. So thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
You bet. So are you in New York?
We are, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm in Kansas City. I'm in the cradle of jazz here in the middle of the country. So yeah. Have you been to Kansas City?
Oh yeah.
I have not.
Oh really?
I don't think I
Oh,
have.
it's a
No.
great place. You should
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
It's fun. I
Could
mean,
go.
it's like, we kind of get pigeonholed other than being jazz and barbecue into being a Midwest town. But of course, St. Mahomes did a lot of good for us. But, there's a lot going on here. I mean, we're going to get the World Cup in a couple years. So it's kind of weird to see this town grow up the way it has.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
A lot of
I know.
jazz history in Kansas City, though.
oh, a whole lot of jazz history, which
And you
which is
got
still
Bobby
fun.
Watson, you got Carl Allen
Right.
out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, and that's the fun of this is that they have a lot of these noon series at the Blue Room off 18th and Vine,
mm,
and I'll go in there and just Bobby Watson just pops in. He's just right
yeah,
there. We'll go
yeah,
to a gig and it's like he's not billed to be on it, but he's in the crowd milling around and he'll pop up there. So there's just all of these little things, and I don't know that this town understands what kind of legend he is and what he's done, and the fact that he's chosen Kansas City and bestowed that sound on us is crazy, crazy cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've
So,
got to change that.
yeah. So let's get into the new album. Let's get into your history together. And to begin that journey, 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging. Lots of things were changing. Itineraries melted away. Uncertainty was abound. Now in 2025, when you look back, how did you survive it? And how has it influenced the way that you creatively go towards your craft now?
Wow. Well, certainly, I think, having to spend, I mean, as musicians, we're kind of in our heads a lot anyway. I think we spend a lot of independent time working on our craft to begin with. And then to have the ability taken away from us of, being able to interact in person with other people, especially with audiences. And certainly with other musicians. I mean, although there were a few cases where, we'd mask and go into studio or go do something, with masks on. I think once you know that you don't have another option, there's an added pressure, right? And it's like we need this interaction. So whoever is around, in our case it was the two of us, at home, that really became, I guess, like what we would concentrate on is let's figure out, how we work together, just the two of us. Let's do, and it wouldn't always be like a collective project or a collaboration. It might be, he's working on something and wants my perspective, and I'm working on something and I want his perspective. I think we started to collaborate on things that we wouldn't necessarily normally consider collaborating on. So some interesting ideas came out of that, and a lot of different insights, which is
Yeah. I mean, we
which
wrote
is pretty
some
cool.
arrangements.
We
I think
did.
we wrote some tunes.
Wrote
Yeah.
some tunes, wrote some arrangements.
Did a handful of those at-home concert
That's
things.
right.
Um,
Yeah, dug
yeah,
into some just like other repertoire that
yeah.
I don't know, you just kind of pull out of a hat. So
Yeah.
that was pretty
And we did a
cool.
lot of teaching online
Of
too.
course.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
with
yeah,
open studio and privately. And I had
yeah.
whole classes that graduated that I never met face to face. I'm just like,
Wow.
hi.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, just in terms of, how that kind of
yeah,
informed like our duet thing or our duo thing, I think that
yeah,
was pretty integral. I mean, we had worked together before
yeah,
and certainly had done a few duet shows, not really shows, but within a show where he was on my gig or I was on his gig. We would, maybe do the occasional duet, but to just day in, day out, go into,
which is a song on the
yeah,
new
which is a
record.
song on the new record.
Yeah,
Go into like
nice transition.
practice, and then okay, together let's do something, and really kind of get into a routine of that. I think that was
Yeah,
pretty integral for what came out
yeah,
to be, a good way of, I think, interacting and working together and figuring out, what works and what doesn't.
yeah, yeah. We got through it. We got
Yeah,
through
we
it.
did. Yeah,
Not everybody
not
did,
everybody
but
did, but for
Yeah.
us, I think it
thankfully
was
we
really,
made it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and yeah,
yeah.
I think we're really grateful for, how we came through it.
So I was listening to a book of all people, Matthew McConaughey, and he got to the end and he was talking about how 2020, this pandemic time, could be the time that we really actually showed our true humanity. There was our true strength really came through this. And I think about all of these vignettes of stories that I hear during this time, the collaborations, the things that you weren't afforded to do before because we were all running like mad towards some finish line. It was this pause for us, for the Venice Canal to clear up, for the skies over Beijing to get rid of the smog. I mean, in very environmental ways and very personal ways, this was a real moment for humanity to say, what are we made of?
Yeah. Yeah. And we found out, on a lighter note, we found out who the couples were in jazz.
That's true.
We've,
Yeah.
Antonio and Tanya and Sullivan and Cecile were like, okay, you're all living together in the same space, making these at home. We get it now. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a rough time, but hopefully we'll never have to go through that again.
Yeah. We got enough going on right now. We don't
I
need
was going to
anything
say,
like that.
Yeah.
I think we're, humanity's being tested again right now.
Oh,
Especially,
it's a
Yeah.
continuation. That line just continues to go down the
it
paper.
really does. Yeah.
So this is your fourth release together. Go take me back to the beginnings of your creative union. How did this begin and how has it evolved over time?
Uh,
Go ahead.
well, we met, what, about 10, 12 years ago in
About
in
maybe,
Shanghai,
yeah,
China, of all
12.
places.
Yeah.
We were both on separate gigs, and a mutual friend introduced us. And let's see, how do we professionally? We started working together. You guessed it, on my record, On My Way to You. You did like 5 out of 10 tunes on that record in 2018.
Yeah. And then he played on my Power
I played
Flower.
Power Flower,
But
which you
that was
released.
after we were
You released that
married.
during the
I did. I
pandemic,
released,
2020.
released
Yeah.
that. I released that during the pandemic. That
Yeah.
was, yeah, on Rope-a-Dope. Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, we started performing together a little bit,
2016 maybe. Yeah.
I think a bit before that. But
Yeah.
then, in any case, whenever it was, we started performing together on each other's projects, and it just, yeah, it started kind of developing into something different. I think just, you know, the we get along well, but I think we challenge each other in new ways. Anyway, I know that there were some times where, when we started writing together, Geoffrey was like, "I've never really collaborated with
That's really
somebody
true. I was just
like
going to say
this."
that. Like,
Not in the same way.
I mean, composing for me was always a really solitary, autonomous kind of thing, and I didn't really want anyone to get involved. But I really, working with you, it was interesting because, like, you'd have different perspectives on things, or like, and you say, "Well, why don't you try this?" And I'd be like, first I'd be like, "No, because that's not what I." But then, like,
Nobody
well,
would
wait a
ever
minute.
dare to tell
That
him what
actually,
to do.
that actually makes it better. And then eventually you go, "Okay, this is cool. This is why book writers have editors, and this is why people write music together."
Yeah.
Because Lennon and McCartney, it's like Ellington and Strayhorn. It works out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's been an interesting process for me, and it's something new. It's for me as an artist, it's breathed new life into my own music, which has been great. You
Yeah.
know?
And for my part, what I really appreciate is that Geoffrey does take a lot of, my perspective as a vocalist on, and doesn't sort of just say, no, no, you're a singer and that's it, stay in this corner.
Yeah.
It's understanding that I have a lot of musical knowledge and that I do know what I'm talking about. And it is, an important, a really important perspective, obviously, especially when, so much of the jazz lexicon is based on songs, the American songbook, and those are what people love, and those are songs that are meant to be sung. So, you can play them, without words, but you're still thinking of those words. So that's, it's been really nice to sort of have that, I don't know, this relationship, I guess, in music as well, with the two differing perspectives.
So there's the personal and there's the professional. But to hone in on the professional part of this, once you decided that you wanted to work together and collaborate on music, what was the most surprising thing you learned about each other during this process of working together and collaborating artistically on a project?
Surprising. I don't know. I can't say I was necessarily surprised. I mean, really just kind of going back to what Gillian said about her own, like, for example, we have this song called You Stay With Me. That was maybe the first song we wrote together. And, it's not the typical, like she was saying, the typical the singer writes the words, the piano player, guitar player, whoever writes the music, and that just it was more like I think I had like a little vamp or something I was doing on the piano, and then you had a
Yeah,
melody
sure.
in your head, and it was really a very collaborative process in terms of you wrote a lot of the music of it and the lyrics. I've written a couple of lyrics, but I try not to mess with it too much. It's just I just stay in my lane, you know. But no, it was very musically was very interesting, and all the arrangements like on your Flower record, all the string arrangements. You know, you Jillian has a way of working where she kind of, I mean, you are music, you do notate music, but you tend to sing parts
Yeah,
because
if
you
I
hear
can
them.
sing it, then I feel
Yeah.
like it's going to work. Do you know what I mean? Because
And
I
so we
think
might
in
go to
terms
the
of
piano
voices.
and
Yeah,
she'll sing a part and I'll say, well, you mean like this, and we'll kind of flesh it out.
yeah,
But she hears like you hear like entire, orchestrations in your head,
yeah.
like the way they say Michael Jackson used to, just have all the parts all in his head all worked out,
Thanks. I don't think I've ever been compared to MJ before.
Yeah, but
But that's amazing.
yeah. So we just kind of flesh it out like that,
Yeah.
And then I might add something. Well, what if we did this? Little, cute. This is the international jazz piano sign language for hip chord. When you turn your hands a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But something like that. So that was, I suppose, a bit surprising, pleasantly, for me.
I'm just trying to think. I don't know what surprised me about you. I think that certainly one of the things I really appreciate is that because when we're performing, when we're improvising, he really will like take whatever ideas that I have and actually kind of encourage me and like feed off of them and the same way, as opposed to sort of like letting the singer do what she wants and then kind of going back to his own thing, which sometimes happens with other instrumentalists or like accompaniment. And it's interesting because there's not like you improvise for 8 bars, you improvise for the 32 bar chorus, and then it's my turn. We'll actually kind of just keep going back and forth and egg each other on, sometimes in the middle. So it's a lot more of a fluid, collaborative approach.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of fun to play.
it's,
Like
yeah,
more like an instrumentalist would interact
yeah,
with.
it's a lot of fun. And I mean, I've had that with a couple of other, musicians that I've worked with in the past, but it was really nice that with Geoffrey, it just sort of happened very quickly.
Wait, you've played with other musicians in the past? So things you learn.
This is the danger of doing this
Yeah,
duo thing, right?
yeah,
Maybe
yes.
things really
I
don't wait
wasn't
along.
born the day before you met me.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
you can blame me for this. It's all my fault here. I asked the question.
Uh, anyway.
So I'm curious here. Do you ever talk to other couples that are doing this, that are in the same realm as you, to kind of talk shop? I mean, this is a unique situation. Do you have that outlet?
We do a little bit, not very often, just because I think, being independent musicians, all of us couples or not, we're like just scrambling
Uh-huh.
and doing a bunch of different jobs all the time. And especially if we're also parents like we are, as if you have kids, but yeah, sometimes it's nice. We'll sort of, get together with other couples that we're friends with and sort of just kind of, talk shop, but more just even just being together. And there's like things that are unspoken understandings, you don't have to explain because we have those things in common.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's rare, but we do like to do it. Certainly would like to do it more.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the best part of being a professional musician? What do you look forward to every day in this land of creating music and collaborating?
I'll go first on this one if you want. For me, it's the fact that well, as a singer, I get to use my body as my instrument, so it's very cathartic. I think it is probably for most musicians, regardless of your instrument. But for me, physically, there's such a huge catharsis and sort of healing that happens every time I get to use my voice and make music and be creative. And it's probably if I don't like if I have a day that's just a really busy day where I have to do, say, a lot of administrative work, or I happen to be just on, planes and trains and automobiles or whatever touring, and I really, really don't have time to warm up my voice to do some singing, which is rare because I will squeeze it in almost like literally anytime, anywhere. If I, for whatever reason, can't, I just notice it, So I guess, what I love most about it is the fact that A, I get to make music for a living, which is pretty amazing.
Yep.
I get to, take in all this information and all of this data and all these lessons and wisdom from all these amazing musicians, living or, gone, whose recordings we have, and I get to channel it through my own creativity and present it to other people, and with all the other hats like I talk about we have to wear, and all the frustrations and all the travel and the delays and the whatever, exhaustion, the thing that gets me through is this is what I love and I get to do it for a living. And it's extremely special and I can share it with other people, and that energy exchange with other people is absolutely worth it. We always talk about, you hear all of our colleagues, people always say, if you play for a room of like 1,000 people and one person writes you and says, this made my week or this made my night or you made me cry because this really touched me in some way, that's the one you remember because you're just like, oh, that made everything worth it. Even if it wasn't, you don't feel like it was your best performance. So, I absolutely, that's what I love about it is it's to me just the biggest gift, I have no complaints.
Yeah, I all that everything she said is exactly that. It's interesting too because sometimes you are on the road a lot, and some days you've had two flights and a 3 hour drive and no dinner, and you have to go to the gig and you're just exhausted and depleted and all that, and you play and somehow you get out of your own way, and you may give a performance that you thought was junk, but someone will come up and say, "Oh my God, that was the best I've ever heard," and
Yeah.
that ballad you played was just and all this stuff, and you go, and you might think, to yourself. I remember when I was younger, especially the '90s with the sort of Young Lions generation that I came up in. There was this attitude of like extreme false modesty and self-deprecation to the point of like making the people that are complimenting you feel bad about the compliment. Wow, that was great. Oh no, man, that was sad. And there's like, well, not to me, it wasn't. I just had an experience, that was beautiful. So I learned from Bobby Hutcherson actually. Bobby said, always smile and say, yeah, it was. Because it's not an egotistical thing. It's confirming that the member of your audience that had that beautiful experience, that it was real for them, and that you're acknowledging that, yeah, that was great. Let's have fun together. Let's have a
Yeah.
great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took a while to like get used to doing that because I feel like I'm from the Midwest and we're all, Lutheran and Methodist and
And
modest and
self-deprecating.
Yeah.
self-deprecating and all that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, but after a while, just say, yeah, thank you, like thank
Yeah.
you, seriously. That was
Yeah.
I'm glad that we were able to lift up each other like that.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I read an interview years ago, and it was Judy Garland, and she had said, the four most important words in my business are thank you very much. And
Ah,
so, regardless, just like you're saying, no matter how exhausted you are or how bad you feel, when somebody comes up and says, that was amazing, or you're really great, or you're my favorite singer, whatever it is, you just say, thank you very much. Even
Yep.
if you feel like this is you're at your worst,
Uh-huh.
you
yeah,
thank them because,
yeah,
that changes everything.
Absolutely.
And it's true. I've had that where I think, ugh, and then somebody says, that was amazing, or thank you so much.
yeah.
I'm like, wow, thank you.
And
I
just
needed
simply
that.
being kind to others
Yeah.
and to your audiences like that, you know, that makes a fan for a lifetime.
Well,
Wow,
yeah.
they were
Yeah.
nice.
Well, because they come
They
out,
were
they're
cool. They
paying
were
money
down
to
to
come out
earth.
and
Yeah,
support
yeah.
us.
All the places you could choose to
Yeah.
spend your money. That's
Yeah.
what Art Blakey used to say. I had a quote already. Well, no, what did he say? He said, spend your money. You can't, so, I don't know. But anyway,
It's like,
it was the
you
idea,
can
the
go and
idea
spend your
that
money on
like,
something else.
we are we're doing art, which is hopefully high level and complex and all that with many layers to it, but we're also entertainers. And,
Mhm.
like Kurt Cobain, here we are now, entertainers,
That's
right?
it.
But it's really like, it has to be both. And, you realize that everyone that's in your audience, they had a choice of what to spend their money on that
Yeah.
night. So I feel like, if I get 100 people in the room or 1,000 people that made the choice to come see me or us play, hey, that's awesome. So thank you for being here. And we're
Yeah.
going to give you the absolutely best show that we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
It's a real social. I mean, there's something special about jazz. There's something about work in the room. There's something special about the crowds that come out. So you kind of piqued my interest. We're talking about live music, and I was thinking about one of my seminal experiences early on. I saw the Jackson 5 at Arrowhead Stadium. And when that
Wow.
sequin glove came up out of the ground, it was like beat me mania. People were fainting. So my question to you is this. What was the early seminal live music moment, jazz or otherwise, that left an impression that you want to carry that stardust on the stage with you?
Yeah.
Oof. I can think of two off the top of my head. So, whew, my father took me, I'm from Toronto, Canada. So when I was about six, my father took my sister and I with, and some other friends of the family to see a matinee during the jazz festival down on the waterfront. And actually, it was Gladys Knight and the Pips.
Wow.
And I was six, and it was, she's sort of, I don't know if I can say this, maybe towards the end of her career, like this was, I was thinking this is like really old time music from, even when my dad was a lot younger. And she was wearing like a white sequin dress, and it was one of those stages like that rotates around,
Uh-huh.
and the sun was setting and it just kind of got darker, so that dress got more and more sparkly. And for
Wow.
me, it was just sort of this surreal experience.
Yeah.
But I was only six and I remember it. And I think actually the Temptations opened, and that was the thing. And it was just so like, wow, this is amazing. And I kind of knew who they were, not really at the time. And then the second one for me, gosh, I mean, I was so lucky. My parents, I mean, I saw incredible performers all the time. I mean, I saw like Dave Brubeck, I saw Oscar Peterson,
Wow.
often, and he was, because he, taught at our school sometimes. But Shirley Horn, after I had started singing, and my mom took me to see her, and it was at Roy Thompson Hall, which is the house for the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, and it was just her trio, and they're so far apart, on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was really odd,
That's
but
cool.
it was like everybody was holding their breath,
Hmm.
and I felt like there was like a mist in the room, like it was just magical and
Yeah.
surreal, and everybody was hanging on to every word and
Yeah.
every note, those slow tempos and all of that intention, and they were so together. They were completely intuitively connected. It was amazing.
That's
But that to me was just life changing.
right
We
on.
did a couple double bills with Shirley when I was with Ray Brown's trio. And we'd play and I'd go out in the audience to listen to her, and it was just like you say, you're just hanging on every note. And
Hmm.
between beat 4 and beat 1 of the next measure, you could go out to the lobby and get a drink and come back. You know what I mean? And it'd be just like zoom, and it'd be
Right.
into, oh my gosh. But what for me, I grew up. Both of my parents were music teachers, and so I grew up around a lot of music. And I heard in my hometown of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, we had a jazz program there, and a lot of visiting artists would come through every year to do master classes and concerts. So I was exposed to a lot of high level jazz music. Um, and my parents' record collection and all that. But it was during a trip to New York. Um, when I was about 15, my mom and dad and me decided to go. Let's go to New York and hear some real jazz and jazz clubs. So we went and saw Mulgrew Miller play solo piano, which I knew I had his records and I'd heard him play before, but he was playing solo piano in a little joint, like a restaurant in the Greenwich Village, in the West Village, and there was only 4 people in the audience. It was my mom and
Wow.
dad and me and Stanley Crouch, the critic, and we were just sitting there. And I sat about, as became a habit of mine, about 2 feet from the corner of the piano here, and just was like watching his hands and everything. And for me, that was, I already knew I liked the music, and I was writing music, and I was playing and stuff, but that was it for me. I was like, this is what I want to do with my life.
Cool.
And then shortly, about a month later, McCoy Tyner with his trio with Lewis Hayes and Avery Sharp came through Minneapolis, and we went to see them, and I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do. And it was a combination of hearing them up close and personal like that, not just listening to records, or to put it in contemporary context, like watching someone on YouTube. It's being right there in the
Yeah.
room, which is so different. It's such a different
Hmm.
experience from than watching it on a screen.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and the combination of being in the room with those molecules moving, and just seeing that happen, and also meeting them.
Yeah.
And McCoy was so, if you ever met McCoy Tyner, he was such a warm, just nice, down to earth person. And Mulgrew, of course, was the same way. And I met Count Basie and Clark Terry when I was like 10 years old.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
Count Basie was in a wheelchair and he was like, "Well, hello there, young man." I'm just like, wow, jazz musicians are not only really nice people, they're like incredibly smart and they
Yeah.
dress well and they play great. I'm like, that's what I want. I want to be like these guys,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to originally get into sports journalism, and I kind of put broadcasting away for a long time.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that had a radio show. I interviewed him. Anyway, he told me to pick a script, and I picked jazz, and I just can't believe how fortunate I've been to be a part of this community of, I mean, you all are titans. You guys, there's this, it's the best kept secret on earth. This community embodies so much talent, but they're so humble. One of Sonny Rollins's relatives that lives on the in the Bay Area told me a story about after 9/11, there was a horn player walking around after the towers collapsed, and an interviewer went up and said, "Sir, what's your name?" And it was Sonny Rollins. He was
Yeah.
Yeah,
playing for everybody on the ground. And
yeah.
it's like that spirit right there, that's just emblematic. That's a very tiny speck on the sand of the ocean in front of us of what you all do. And it's
That's
just
huge.
someone was telling me one time too, McCoy Tyner loved getting gelato, and they were on tour in Italy, and he told me this very intricate story about him eating an ice cream cone. And what a way to humanize McCoy Tyner, having an ice cream in Europe. What a great visual. It's a Norman Rockwell
Right.
moment.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to somehow synthesize McCoy Tyner eating ice cream
That's what
with fourths in the left hand.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how
Yeah.
did these? And then Michelle Coltrane told me one time about when they finally moved as a family to the West Coast, she saw Sarah Vaughan riding a bike right by the ocean. And I was just like,
Ah,
wait, hold on. This
wow.
behemoth, the voice is just riding a bike with the seagulls. It's just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's those moments that just make it that much richer. So,
absolutely.
um,
Wow.
so if anybody wants to pick up the new album, if they want to catch you live, anything coming up, where's the best place?
Depends on where you are, I guess.
Well, you can
But yeah,
purchase the album on either of our Bandcamp pages,
that's
Okay.
right.
or
Or streaming on any
streaming. But
platform, really. It's everywhere.
we prefer, if you want to buy it, that really helps us out better.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're heading out on tour tomorrow.
Hmm.
Let's see. Tomorrow we're playing the Mill in Westport, New York,
Yep.
and then we go to Jimmy's Jazz
Yeah.
and Blues
That's in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Saturday, and then we're going to be on the West Coast.
Yeah. Then we're going to be in, I think, Los Angeles
Yeah.
at Sam First.
That's Tuesday, the
Okay.
11th,
And then we're going to be
10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we're going to be in La Jolla at the Athenaeum Library, and then we're going to be in Paso Robles,
Yeah, libretto.
Libretto, and we're going to be in Oakland at Piedmont Piano.
Yeah.
There.
And
That's this little.
the tour, I'm going to put all this in the show notes. So if anybody wants to
Wonderful.
grab it and catch on to it, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for taking a minute out, going
Yeah.
down memory
Thank
lane,
you.
touching
Yeah.
on your worlds today. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks. We appreciate it, Joe.
Absolutely.
Jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, Casey Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.